Tonight, the jury in the criminal case of 5 former junior hockey players is discharged, but the trial goes ahead.
Once that accusation is made, whether there's foundation or not, it's really going to put things in jeopardy.
Why the judge took over rather than declaring a second mistrial. A U.S. fugitive wanted for 2 decades nabbed in Toronto.
It's very shocking. I cannot believe it.
Checking in with the Canadian editor who's known Donald Trump for decades.
He was just too much in the news, and it was impossible not to ridicule him in a certain way.
And how did that go over?
Eli Glasner with Graydon Carter, who doesn't hold back.
From CBC News, this is The National with Erica Johnson.
Thank you for joining us. The sexual assault trial of 5 former World Junior hockey players has been rocked by a surprise development. As of now, this is no longer a jury trial. The judge has discharged its 14 men and women after one of them complained to her about the perceived behavior of the lawyers for one of the accused. That raised questions about the jury's impartiality. So now they are out of the picture, and the fate of the 5 accused rests in the hands of the judge alone. And without jurors, Katie Nicholson can reveal a detail that they weren't supposed to hear. This isn't the first time a possible interaction between jury and defense has upended this case.
You're going to discredit a young girl who's saying that when she was in this
She was older than the boys.
Supporters of EM and supporters of the hockey players accused of sexually assaulting her clash outside the courthouse.
She was scared.
She was older than the boys.
She was scared, and she did what she needed to do
was
to
a
get out of
woman
that
too.
situation.
Everybody was an adult.
The drama outside eclipsed by the drama unfolding inside as Justice Maria Carosia decided what to do about a note sent to her Thursday, signed by a juror. It accused Alex Fermenton's lawyers, Daniel Brown and Hillary Dudding, of judging and making fun of jurors. Every day when we enter the courtroom, they observe us, whisper to each other, and turn to each other and laugh as if they are discussing our appearance, the note said. This is unprofessional and unacceptable. The defense teams argued the accusations raised the possibility of a tainted jury and an unfair trial. Carosia decided to discharge the jury. In a press release, Brown and Dudding called the incident an unfortunate misinterpretation. No defense counsel would risk alienating a juror, the statement said.
Ultimately,
This defense lawyer has no involvement in the trial but isn't surprised by the decision.
and I think once that accusation is made, whether there's foundation or not, it's really going to put things in jeopardy, and that's what's happened.
It's the second time this trial was almost derailed. Early on, Dudding and another juror had an interaction at a food court during a lunch break. There were differing accounts of what happened. The defense called for a mistrial and got one. A second jury was then selected. Now that jury has been sent home, but the trial didn't miss a beat. Former World Junior player Tyler Steenbergen faced cross-examination on the sex acts he said he saw his former teammates engage in with a naked woman.
By mid-morning, it was business as usual, with one exception: the fates of the 5 accused now in the judge's hands alone.
And Katie, the chaotic scenes you showed us from outside the courtroom, they're also having an impact on the trial.
Yeah, there were dozens of people, particularly when EM was testifying, who would show up. And what was happening is that they were heckling the accused and their lawyers to the point that the lawyers brought this up. They were afraid that this would taint the jury. There were preparations made so that the jury would come in through another entrance. One day, some of those folks actually got in with signs, which again renewed those fears. But now, of course, with no jury, that is no longer a worry.
All right, thanks for this. Katie Nicholson in London. Let's dig deeper into this now with Lydia Riva. She's a veteran criminal defense lawyer who is not involved in this case. Lydia, walk us through the judge's decision. What would she have been worried about if she hadn't discharged the jury?
The judge was concerned that this jury could not be impartial. She had concerns that this jury would have been influenced by their negative perceptions of the defense lawyers, and that this would have negatively impacted their ability to look at the evidence in this case objectively to determine whether or not the defendants are guilty beyond a reasonable doubt.
Okay, so now that the judge is also acting as the jury, how does that change the way the Crown and the defense approach the case? Does it tend to favor one side or the other?
I don't think this will fundamentally change the way either the Crown or the defense approaches their case. A case like this takes a lot of preparation from both sides. The most important witness for the Crown has already testified and been cross-examined, so I don't think it'll fundamentally change much the way they approach their case or their strategies.
So both sides had to agree for this to happen. What does this tell us about how the defense perceives how this case is going?
Yes, both the defense and the Crown must consent to this procedure. I'm sure there were many factors which the defense considered, like the impact on the defendants and the stress and cost of having another redo, but they also would be considering how their case is going, and they would be reflecting on how the evidence of the complainant has gone thus far and how the trial has gone thus far, and whether or not, in fact, the Crown has proven its case for that very high burden of beyond a reasonable doubt.
Now, this doesn't happen very often, so can people still be confident that the system is working?
Absolutely. This is an indication that the system works. Both parties agreed to a practical solution that salvages this trial. The alleged victim testified for 9 days in this case, and this solution allows the case to go forward with an experienced trial judge who has already heard the evidence, knows the law, and is going to be able to make a determination.
Well, certainly an interesting case and an interesting development. Defense lawyer Lydia Riva, thank you.
Thank you.
Rain has come to parts of fire-stricken Manitoba, but not enough of it has fallen in the Lac du Bonnet area.
I was hoping the rain would help, but I guess it's not. The wind is picking up, and I guess there's what we heard is a few hot spots still.
One section of the evacuated area was opened last night, but most of it remains dangerous. The 4,000-hectare fire led to the deaths of 2 people and destroyed dozens of homes and cottages. There's a new twist in the deeply troubling case of 2 young Nova Scotia children missing for 2 weeks. The search in their rural community, halted last week, will resume as what's described as a recovery effort. Nicola Sagan has more.
These woods scoured for a week without a trace of 2 missing kids, about to be examined again. Officials now confirming the search surrounding the home of Lily and Jack Sullivan will resume Saturday, likely as a recovery effort.
The county as a whole and the province as a whole, I think, need to know what happened in this case.
Police say the 4- and 6-year-olds wandered away 2 weeks ago and said they had no evidence the children were abducted. But RCMP didn't announce the involvement of the Major Crimes Unit until days after it was brought in, nor that it hadn't ruled out that the disappearance was suspicious.
RCMP declined an interview request and would not answer our questions about the case. For instance, it isn't clear why investigators are so certain the children were not abducted, and officials have not said whether they know who, other than their family, was last with the kids.
Now, after dozens of police interviews and more than 180 tips from the public, still no answers.
It doesn't add up at many levels.
This criminologist questioning the way RCMP are sharing information about the case, relying on the public for tips, but giving few details.
Based on appearances, this went in the wrong direction early on, and key momentum and leads were lost when they were out in the fields looking for kids that maybe were never there.
This expert is zeroing in on other aspects of the disappearance, like school being closed, then the kids being homesick the following day.
The 2 days unaccounted before the missingness is just a red flag.
But for this worried community, what's top of mind now is that the search is resuming, whether for rescue or recovery. Nicola Sagan, CBC News, Lansdowne Station, Nova Scotia.
In Vancouver, authorities released an initial review into last month's street festival tragedy. 11 people were killed when a vehicle plowed through the crowd. Georgie Smythe explains why it may not be easy to find the right balance between community safety and police security.
Pain is still on display just blocks from this memorial. A man allegedly drove an SUV into a crowd at a Filipino Lapu Lapu Day street festival in late April. killing 11 people, injuring dozens more. The mayor promises change.
The city and the Vancouver Police Department have been working to develop new tools to enhance event assessment to consider gathering size, layout, location, road access, and other emergency risk factors.
Future events will be held differently, says the city. With a new database to monitor threats, there'll be extra security and equipment like these brand new barricades. But this initial review also found no gaps or oversights in the event last month when a vehicle was able to drive into a closed street.
The risk assessment would not have warranted heavy barricades.
I'm actually relieved to hear that there were no large gaps.
Melissa DiGenova is helping plan Italian Day for next month. It's one of Canada's biggest street festivals. There'll be extra police there, but it'll take place before the final report recommendations are made about things like street barriers.
What will it look like, or will it change for vehicles to come in and out?
Kaiji Adam Lowe has been charged with 8 counts of second-degree murder. Police say Lowe had a significant history of mental health encounters with law enforcement. Officials say he was following an established treatment plan and was not considered a public safety risk. But the incident prompted the province to order a review of the laws that govern the rights of people with mental illness and care like involuntary treatment, even as the city acknowledged there are limits.
We cannot predict what's in the minds of every single individual, but we're not using that as an excuse as well. There are things that we can do to react to make this place safer.
Police say organisers can ask them for a heavier presence or more patrols if they feel like their event needs more security. But remember, there's only so many resources to go around and police every event here this summer.
So, Georgie, how are people feeling heading into outdoor summer events?
The people we spoke to are going ahead with caution, but Erica, there's no sign that there'll be less people at gatherings, especially going into May long weekend, which is really the kickoff to back-to-back events.
Okay, thanks for this. Georgie Smythe in Vancouver. In Ottawa, B7 business leaders today urged countries to lift barriers to trade.
If we have a more closed trading system across the G7, puts a $5.5 trillion value at stake.
The B7 brings together business leaders from G7 countries. A joint communiqué recommended critical minerals, energy security, and artificial intelligence as some key points for discussion at next month's G7 summit in Alberta. Russia and Ukraine sat down in Istanbul for their first direct talks in years, but stood up again quickly with no progress on peace. And as Briar Stewart explains, it's not clear when Washington might intervene or how.
Russia and Ukraine's first direct peace talks in more than 3 years were over in less than 2 hours. They agreed to each exchange 1,000 prisoners of war, but found no common ground on a ceasefire.
If you want to have serious negotiations, you need to have guns silent. This is logical.
Ukraine said Russia made unrealistic demands, telling Kyiv its troops had to withdraw from the 4 embattled territories before there's a ceasefire. If they don't, Moscow reportedly threatened to seize even more land, saying it's prepared to fight forever.
You have a message for Vladimir Putin? I'm here.
Ukraine's president had been in Turkey, but Volodymyr Zelensky left when he said it was clear Vladimir Putin wasn't coming. He's now in Albania meeting with his European allies.
The Russian position is clearly unacceptable, and not for the first time.
Europe wants to work with the U.S. and roll out tougher sanctions. U.S. President Trump thinks it's all going to come down to a meeting.
Nothing's going to happen until Putin and I get together, okay?
The Kremlin, too, wants a summit with Trump, but says it will take time to plan.
Putin is the man who decides on everything.
The former foreign affairs minister for Ukraine says the U.S. needs to exert real pressure.
Everything we've seen so far since the inauguration of President Trump did not suggest that he is willing to do it, because we saw him criticizing and cracking down on Ukraine, and we saw him engaging and courting Putin and Russia. So this has to change.
Both Russia and Ukraine say they're drafting details for how they would see the ceasefire working. Ukraine believes, too, that the next step should be a summit, but it wants to see it between Zelensky and Putin. Briar Stewart, CBC News, London.
Israel's military is now calling for the immediate evacuation of northern Gaza as it starts a new ground attack. According to the Gaza Health Authority, more than 53,000 people have been killed since the war began, hundreds this week alone. Israel's military action followed the October 7th attack in Israel by Hamas, during which it killed around 1,200 people and took more than 250 hostage. The 27-year-old man who stabbed author Salman Rushdie on stage at a 2022 speaking event has been sentenced to 25 years in prison. Haiti Matar from New Jersey left Rushdie blind in one eye after stabbing him in the head, neck, torso, and left hand. The 77-year-old Rushdie has faced death threats since the 1988 publication of his novel, The Satanic Verses. An American fugitive on the run for more than 2 decades has been arrested in Toronto. Thomas Daigle uncovered the double life he lived here in this CBC News investigation.
Allegedly driving drunk on this road in Florida, prosecutors say Patrick Lutz Jr. crashed his pickup truck, killing 19-year-old Nancy Lopez and her boyfriend on Christmas morning 1998. A fugitive for more than 2 decades, Lutz has now been found and arrested after leading a double life in Toronto.
What he was wrong, running around. He's going to pay for everything he did.
A CBC News investigation finds Lutz used the alias Pat Lighthelp, working as a self-styled psychic, drinking with friends and enjoying ski trips in Canada. All while Lopez's loved ones agonized over her memory, trying to hold on to hope Lutz would be caught.
He didn't even call to apologize to us or say, I'm sorry. If he doesn't get justice here, God's gonna punish this guy.
Still, I cry for her. Still, just my baby sister,
Court files we obtained show in November 2023, an anonymous tip that Lutz was in Canada later led police to this Toronto apartment building where the fugitive had been living.
It's kind of surprising. It's very shocking. I cannot believe it.
Records show Lutz was denied entry to Canada at the Niagara Falls border crossing in 2003. It's not clear when he later found his way in and how he remained on the lam while living out in the open, even hosting a monthly trivia night at this Toronto bar.
Unless you come into contact with law enforcement somehow, or try to fly on an aircraft or try to cross the border, it's possible to remain hidden.
Lutz is scheduled to appear in this downtown court later this month. He faces extradition back to Florida, where he's charged with 2 counts of manslaughter. Thomas Daigle, CBC News, Toronto.
A made-in-Canada technology is being credited for saving the life of a baby born with a rare genetic condition.
It gives us the pathway by which we can use a very similar approach to treat another baby with a slightly different disease.
How custom gene editing may open the door to advances in other rare cases. Next. Plus, there are calls for Canadians to take the stage at the world's largest music competition.
Canada is a country with a very strong musical history and present.
The push to play at Eurovision. And later, an amazing discovery when a $30 copy of the Magna Carta turns out to be a centuries-old original.
It was recently authenticated as an actual copy from the reign of King Edward I.
We're back in 2. A baby boy born with a rare and life-threatening condition is now on the mend. It's thanks to a first-of-its-kind personalized gene editing therapy with a Canadian connection. Jennifer Yoon has the details.
Baby KJ arrived earlier than expected, but the family's joy was shattered when KJ was diagnosed with a rare genetic illness called CPS1 deficiency. Only half the newborns with it survive.
You Google CPS1 deficiency and it's either fatality rate or liver transplant.
With time running out, doctors at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia decided to take a chance, an experimental gene editing treatment tailor-made for KJ.
The drug is really designed only for KJ, so the genetic variants that he has are specific to him.
This could revolutionize the way we treat rare disorders.
The treatment needed to do two things. First, search the 3 billion genomic letters in KJ's body for the one mutation causing the problem, then swap it for the proper one. Secondly, make sure it's delivered before KJ's body breaks down the messenger RNA therapy. To do that, it was wrapped in a protective cocoon. It's a Canadian technology, previously used for COVID-19 vaccines and developed by a Vancouver-based company. Now, KJ's case is raising hopes that personalized gene editing treatments could work for other conditions.
It gives us the pathway by which we can use a very similar approach to treat another baby with a slightly different disease.
Along with hope for the treatment come concerns that access to it be widespread.
How can we ensure that we create a framework and a path to adopt in an ethical way, but also in a faster, rapid way?
KJ's case will be watched closely, says this doctor specializing in precision medicine.
We need to follow over time. Are there any unexpected side effects that we are not thinking about?
KJ might still need a liver transplant down the line, but for now, he's doing well. His family feeling relief and hope for the first time in months that he might come home. Jennifer Yoon, CBC News, Toronto.
It's the biggest international music competition in the world, the Eurovision Song Contest.
It is literally the Hunger Games of music. It's wild.
Why some say Canada should compete on the big stage. Next. Plus, a Canadian journalist looks back on a decades-long war of words with Donald Trump.
Pretends like he's masculine. You know, masculinity doesn't involve bullying or whining, and he is a chronic bullier and a chronic whiner.
When the going was good for Graydon Carter. And driven by an oil boom, Guyana has the world's fastest-growing economy.
I don't think there is any other place in the world that is going through what Guyana is at the moment.
How it's managing the risks that come with new opportunities. The National breaks down the stories shaping your world. Next. American singer Chris Brown is believed to be inside that van arriving at court in Manchester for a hearing over an alleged assault. He's charged with inflicting grievous bodily harm in an incident 2 years ago at a London nightclub. Brown will be held in custody until a court hearing next month, the same day he's expected to perform in Germany. Tomorrow, millions from around the world will watch the Eurovision Song Contest final. The competition is the Olympics of pop music, and now some Canadians want in on the action. But as Magda Gebrselassie explains, it may not be so easy.
Fiery performances, elaborate sets, and a sea of fans and flags. Eurovision 2025 shines with 37 countries from Europe and beyond, battling it out with original songs.
It is literally the Hunger Games of music. It's wild.
Canadian Laurel Barker has been in the thick of it several times. In 2019, she wrote 3 songs for the UK, Germany, and Switzerland that made it into the final. And while she's thrilled to lend her talent to other nations, she also wishes Canada would compete.
Eurovision really is this warm, fuzzy love fest, celebration of people from all cultures, all walks of life, all orientations, and I really believe that Canada represents all of that.
Several Canadians have represented other countries. Most famously, Celine Dion took home the win for Switzerland in 1988.
If we're good enough to sing and win for another country, why aren't we making the effort to field our own act?
There could be a way. Australia competes because 10 years ago, its public broadcaster was invited to participate. The European Broadcasting Union, which coordinates the song contest, says it's up to CBC to express interest, and that the CBC is the only Canadian broadcaster that could hypothetically hope to participate in the Eurovision Song Contest. Previously, an outside production company pitched a show to CBC to pick a Eurovision contestant for Canada, but CBC passed on the idea, saying it is prohibitively expensive. Meanwhile, Canadian fans are getting in on the action in other ways.
My passion led me to attending 2 Eurovisions in a row.
For now, Ariana Vink will keep rooting for her favorites, like Sweden, to take the win on Saturday.
I'd love to see us in it one day.
Magda Salasa, CBC News, Toronto.
Now it's time to dig deeper into the stories shaping our world. A tiny Caribbean country is becoming an oil-rich nation. Can Guyana manage an oil boom while maintaining its rare net zero status?
The opportunity we have right now is an opportunity of a lifetime.
We're on the ground in the newest petro-state. But first,
And he is a chronic bullier and a chronic whiner.
the complicated, decades-old relationship and ongoing feud between renowned Canadian journalist Graydon Carter and Donald Trump.
I think he just wanted respect.
Eli Glasner sat down with the notable former Vanity Fair editor in New York as he shared what he's learned about Trump from writing and watching him close up.
New York City is a beacon. Writers, schemers, and dreamers come to these concrete canyons to carve out a little piece of the American dream. In the late 1970s, 2 very different young men arrived. Graydon Carter, an editor with literary ambitions, and Donald Trump, a real estate developer looking to make his mark. Both outsiders, one raised in Ottawa, winters playing shinny on frozen ponds, the other son of a developer from Queens.
Queens that's the toughest journey you can make because Manhattanites are snobby about the other boroughs.
As Trump's New York City empire began to grow, Graydon Carter was there, chronicling it in the pages of Spy magazine and then as the editor of Vanity Fair. 2 different paths, but often intertwined. Carter's journey with Trump started back in '84 when he was assigned by GQ magazine to follow the man with the golden cufflinks for 3 weeks.
This was his first sort of national exposure. I did sort of describe him as an outer borough Sharpie. I think he had a mauve limousine, which are now very rare, but they were not so rare in the city, and with vanity plates. And that I made this comment that his hands were too small for his body. So then we get to Spy magazine, and we had epithets for people. And Trump, and just every time we mentioned him, we referred to him as a vulgarian, a short-fingered vulgarian.
Yeah.
He hated this.
It got under his skin.
It got under his very thin skin, yes.
But, I mean, let's go back from 3 weeks with Trump. What is he like in a room? What is he like with business clients? What did you learn from spending that time with him?
He's sort of faux dominant. He's I don't know what I mean, he pretends like he's masculine, but you know, the masculinity doesn't involve bullying or whining, and he's a chronic bullier and a chronic whiner. And that was sort of, that was evident back then, but it's like on steroids now.
When Carter took over as the editor of Vanity Fair in '92, his relationship with the future president shifted.
So all of a sudden, I became like his best friend. And I'd get notes commenting on some article, but in a flattering way. But then it just couldn't hold because he was just too much in the news, and it was impossible not to ridicule him in a certain way.
And how did that go over?
Well, then it was fine until Twitter came along, and then he sort of discovered those little hands started tweeting about me. And he called me sloppy, he called me a loser, he said Vanity Fair was slipping, he said the Oscar party was no longer hot. He said my wife said I was a major loser, he said the rate really was going to fold. Anyway, it just went on and on
But
and
what
on.
does this say about, I don't know, like his capacity to hold a grudge? Like where does this unending focus on his enemies and what has irked him come from?
I have a feeling that when he came to New York, it's funny that coming from Queens, that's the toughest journey you can make because New Yorkers, Manhattanites are snobby about the other boroughs, and I think he wanted to impress the people that ran New York. He wanted to impress the New York Times and the people at the Wall Street Journal. I think he just wanted respect.
It's great to be at Trump Tower. It's great to be in a wonderful city, New York.
Flash forward to 2015, Trump launched his presidential campaign.
And I said, you know what I'll do? I'll do it. Because a lot of people said he'll never run. Number one, he won't want to give up his lifestyle. They're right about that, but I'm doing it.
But what prompted him? Some think it was a moment at the White House Correspondents' Dinner a few years earlier, where Carter was watching.
Say what you will about Mr. Trump, he certainly would bring some change to the White House.
Donald Trump has been saying that he will run for president as a Republican, which is surprising since I just assumed he was running as a joke.
And I was sitting maybe 10 feet from Trump, and you could just see him seething this whole time. You're supposed to laugh at these things.
Sure.
You're supposed to, when you're the
It's a roast.
It's a roast. Anyway, so that people say that's when he decided to run for president. I have no idea.
I mean, you understand how he takes affront. Do you think there could be some truth to that?
Possible, yes.
I mean, you were watching him.
Possible.
As people are laughing at him.
He had mentioned to people in the past that he might run for president, but most people just thought it was a joke.
I mean, what does it say?
And now the joke's on us.
As the editor of Vanity Fair, Trump was just part of Carter's coverage. For 25 years, his magazine broke stories and elevated stars with its glossy Hollywood covers. After he stepped away, Carter still missed making and breaking those stories. Here in the Village, you'll find what he did next. Airmail, part a throwback, a newsstand with a collection of, yes, physical magazines. And then there's Airmail. The website is the modern version, a virtual collection curated by Carter to try and make sense of our modern world. Take that shot of espresso. You might need it. A big part of what made Vanity Fair special inside the cover, not just the famous faces, wonderful long-form journalism. And I'm thinking about right now where, like, just today we're talking about, oh, did you hear the latest headline? Trump said this, Trump said that. What do you think, Graydon, we lose now that we don't have that ability to kind of step back and take a wider look? It feels like we're just constantly reacting and reacting.
The thing is, it's harder. Than the Trump administration, it's like trying to get a cup of water from a fire hose. And if you're, like, say you assigned a story on tariffs, you couldn't even close that story because you just had to close it and the tariffs go up from 25% to 200%. Then they're down to 0%. So it's very hard in this administration.
But as a Canadian, I mean, I'm looking at your Order of Canada pin. How do you?
I wore that for you and for the TV stuff.
We appreciate it.
No, I've been wearing it for the last 3 weeks. Before that, I thought it's too ostentatious. But now I'm I wear it on my pajamas for just so I can impress my wife.
Because you're proud.
Because I'm proud. Yeah.
What have you learned in terms of how to confront Trump, or what really motivates him?
Well, I think he took a good first step. I think Mark Carney. I've only met him once, but he has a wonderful. An incredible resume and a very wry sense of humor. In a duel of wits with Trump, he'll destroy him. And I think Canada's doing all the right things. I think that it has brought the country together. It's done wonders for the Liberal Party and for liberal democracies in Europe. This too will pass.
You believe that?
Yeah, oh yeah, 100%.
And you can watch Eli's full interview with Graydon Carter on the National's YouTube channel. Long considered an environmental champion, rainforest-covered Guyana is experiencing an oil boom.
The opportunity we have right now is an opportunity of a lifetime.
Guyana's bumpy ride from net zero to petrostate. That's next. Rainforest-covered Guyana is turning into the world's next petrostate, sitting on over 11 billion barrels of oil. Its explosive growth may be on a collision course with the environment in a country vulnerable to climate change.
In a blink of an eye, it's going to be upon us. And if you look at the way the climate has been changing, it's going to happen.
Kyle Bax breaks down Guyana's rapid transformation into what some are calling the Dubai of the Caribbean, and the fears about growing too much, too fast.
Perched near the top of South America, rainforest-covered Guyana is a brand new player in the oil business.
I don't think there is any other place in the world that is going through what Guyana is at the moment.
An environmental champion, a rare net zero emission nation, is now the world's latest petrostate.
Everybody got really excited while the environmentalists shock in their boots.
A rare opportunity for prosperity paired with worries for the future.
It cannot be an oil and gas driven economy only. We will go downhill.
No matter where you go in Guyana, every town, village, and city is a construction zone. Roads and bridges, hospitals and hotels, industrial and residential developments. Semi-trucks drive around the clock, delivering rock and sand to job sites throughout the nation. The entire South American country booming.
20 years ago, our economy was struggling to survive. We were barely feeding ourselves. The opportunity we have right now is an opportunity of a lifetime. We as Guyanese should all capitalize on those opportunities.
There's a plethora of work for construction companies like his, but there is a shortage of workers.
And that's one of the reasons why you see wage and salary keep going up, because we're poaching from one another. It's a small pool, and we're all trying to take from that little pool.
The oil bounty is large for such a small country, the population less than 1 million. The struggle is to not squander the wealth. Instead, tackle the lengthy to-do list of overcoming poverty, improving education, and saving for the future, too.
If you have all the wealth, and you have an abundance of wealth, and it's not managed properly, definitely you can go right down to ground zero.
Guyana has the fastest growing economy in the world for 5 years in a row, jumping by 44% last year alone. This oil company growing and hiring rapidly.
It's really wonderful. I don't think there is any other place in the world that is going through what Guyana is at the moment. So we see a lot of companies wanting to do business in Guyana. Local businesses are also thriving. So it's a very positive business environment at the moment.
Along the way, many growing pains persist. Rising prices for supplies, non-stop construction, and gridlock on the roads.
Because the danger of the people on the roadside with the motorbike and the taxi and things like those things.
This summer, construction will begin to make this a 4-lane highway.
They have to take more caution on the roadside.
The oil jackpot is often considered a blessing, but for others, it's more of a curse. Guyana's unique status as a net zero country at risk.
And then the moment oil is discovered, then what?
Yes, and then everybody got really excited while the environmentalists shock in their boots. So you had a mixed views. The person saw it as a blessing. We're going to finally be rich. We're going to be the Dubai of the Caribbean.
And Guyana is dealing with another contradiction. With most of its tiny population on the coast, this emerging petrostate is profoundly at risk from climate change.
In a blink of an eye, it's going to be upon us. And if you look at the way the climate has been changing, it's going to happen. Persons that are watching it are going to see it's going to happen.
At a training college in a rural part of the country, all of the students here already have a job in the oil industry. The campus is expanding as demand for skilled workers continues.
Remember, Guyana has never had an oil and gas industry, so we're starting from scratch, zero.
ExxonMobil is the dominant player in Guyana and hires partners to operate these massive production and storage vessels.
There's a total of 3 vessels that we operate and maintain.
Martin Chung is a rarity, a local Guyanese who is leading one of those companies. The oil patch and the environment, he says, are not in conflict.
What we do in terms of impact to the environment is at most minimal, or at least zero.
The struggle continues between optimism and concern for Guyana's future.
Scientists have shown that by 2030, the entire coastline, which includes Georgetown, would be under water. Will be flooded. And they have projections.
Back at the college, the director on campus has lived in many oil-producing countries, including Canada. His hope is that Guyana can prosper too, all sectors, without leaving anyone behind.
How do you try to equilibrate that so that everyone feels they're getting a fair share of this? You can see how this can be transformative for Guyana, providing we keep our eyes on the ball that it has to be a sustainable economy. It cannot be an oil and gas driven economy only. We will go downhill.
The road to a new, prosperous Guyana is long. The challenges of an oil boom still loom. Yet no number of those concerns can cloud the reality Guyana has struck the oil lottery and now has the riches to lift its people out of poverty, a tiny country now awash in transformational wealth.
Now, Kyle, just how quickly is the country's oil patch growing?
Well, so far, the consortium of oil companies led by ExxonMobil has invested more than $50 billion US in developing Guyana's offshore oil fields. That spans 3 operational mega projects and another 5 in development. Oil production is expected to double in the next few years. Natural gas production is growing now too. Concerns persist as well, such as who pays for any possible oil spill and what damage could occur from increased tanker traffic. Guyana is regarded as the fastest offshore oil development in history. And Erica, so far there's no easing to that rapid pace.
Okay, thanks, Kyle. Kyle Bax in Calgary tonight. This Sunday, Ian sits down with Canadian comedian Dave Thomas. Just back from a trip to Ukraine, he talks about his experience there and what he learned from people living through war.
There is a tendency in the news these days to get the news that spikes, that's the hot story, and the other stuff becomes page 6 pretty fast. And it's not anybody's fault. It's just that there's so much news to cover that it just happens. And so, sure, when a war goes on for a long time, as this one has, it does kind of get pushed to the back of the paper. And unfortunately, these people need help on a daily and a recurring basis. And so I wanted to be an advocate for them.
One of the reasons that you have this platform is that you used to be a big deal, Dave.
It happened so fast, right? I went from page 6 to page 12 in the blinking of an eye. It's terrible.
Well, you're still on page 1 in Edmonton at the Ice District, outside the rink where the Edmonton Oilers play. There is a statue of Bob and Doug McKenzie, the characters you and Rick Moranis played. Not a lot of Canadian comics can say there's a statue of them somewhere in the country.
Not a lot of people have a statue of them while they're still alive. That, to me, is the big gift.
You can catch Ian's full conversation with Dave Thomas this Sunday on The National. Up next, Harvard becomes the center of an historical discovery.
He buys something they think is interesting or old, but not realizing it's an authentic piece of our history.
The document that dates back centuries in our moment. You're looking at the Magna Carta, a medieval document that helped lay the foundation for modern democracy, pictured here at Harvard University. They've had it for decades, thinking it was a replica. But now, after academics did a deep dive, their unexpected finding makes our moment.
In 1946, Harvard University acquired what they believed was a copy of Magna Carta for around 27 American at the time. It was recently authenticated as an actual copy from the reign of King Edward I, so dating back to the 1300s. You hear about this every now and again, where somebody buys something they think is interesting or old, but not realizing that it's an authentic, real piece of our history. They were just printed on parchment. I bet they're glad that they've been storing it properly. I'm speaking now as a teacher of Canadian history and civics. I just immediately started reflecting on the time that we're living in right now, in which that document has kind of reemerged on our consciousness, especially with what Harvard University itself is going through regarding the rule of law. I think there's a monetary value, but then the kind of the democratic, kind of spiritual value to our democracy, you can't measure that.
That is quite the discovery. And apparently this Magna Carta at Harvard is one of just 7 such documents from that period known to exist. And if you're wondering what it might be worth, well, a similar document from the same time frame sold 18 years ago for over $21 million US. From all of us at The National, thank you for being with us. You can watch anywhere, anytime on the free CBC News app and subscribe to The National's YouTube channel. I'm Erica Johnson in Vancouver. Take care.